Ms. Sylvia Lim.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got three clarifications for the Senior Minister of State on the role of Temasek and also MOF. Earlier on in her reply, she mentioned that Temasek was very active in promoting good governance, for example, by conducting seminars, trainings, and so on. I think that's more on a general level, but she did not touch on whether Temasek had been active in, for example, querying suspicious practices in the companies that they invest in. So I'd like to ask her whether she's aware of whether Temasek has been playing that role specifically to query what has been going on in some of their portfolio companies. That's the first clarification. The second clarification is in my speech as well as in her response, she did mention the Chinese New Year lunch sharing that the chairman of Temasek had recently, where it was quite clear from his speech that corruption is an OB marker now specifically expressed as something that Temasek would not want to tolerate. Is she aware of any other unethical practices that are OBs for Temasek? For example, do they avoid investing in companies that promote unclean energy or promote tobacco, for example? Is she aware of any other OB markers for Temasek to invest in? And finally, the third clarification is on the role of the ministry itself as the sole shareholder of Temasek. I think at least Mr. Lim Boon Heng accepts that Temasek is flying Singapore's flag, and if anything were to happen that affects the reputation of its portfolio companies, our country's reputation would be affected as well. So I'd like to ask her whether MOF actually has any specific parameters for Temasek as to certain things that should or would not be condoned as investments. I understand by comparison the Norwegian government has got certain excluded investments. I'd like to ask whether MOF also has something similar with its investment companies.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just take the last question first. Essentially, as the shareholder of Temasek, we don't get involved in their commercial decisions. But what the Ministry of Finance's expectation of Temasek is that it must uphold the highest standards of integrity, highest standards of governance, do not get involved in anything illegal, make sure that you adhere to the highest standards of corporate governance. That is our expectation of them. They are a professional team, and we expect them to live up to their expectation. So in terms of the specific question, do we get involved in what you should invest in, what you should not invest in, the government does not sort of step into that. But our expectation is that Temasek must act properly, good compliance with governance, and higher standards of integrity. And they, in turn, I think, expect that too of their investee companies, as you would have seen from the discussion that the chairman had with its investee companies. Ms. Lim's second question was where she said, now that corruption is an OB marker, actually corruption has always been an OB marker, not just now. It's been that case for a long time. But she asked whether I was aware of specific investment principles. I would come back to what I said earlier, which is that obviously Temasek will not condone anything that's illegal, anything that's in breach of international regulations, basically anything that constitutes bad conduct or improper governance. I think if one reads the speech given by Mr. Lim Boon Heng to the investee companies, it really sort of sets out, or it outlines what his expectation is. I won't go through the whole thing, but let me just give some excerpts where he said, during my lunch remarks just now, I emphasize how important it is for our companies to guard and uphold the principles of good governance and integrity in business dealings. This is especially so for our Singapore-based Temasek portfolio companies. Singapore has a reputation as a clean place for both business and government. We take this reputation very seriously. It's a hallmark of our nation and a fundamental value on which we have built our economy. He also went on to say, we are stewards responsible not just for short-term profits, but really the long-term future of our companies. And he called for their support to bring together all their board members along with their CEOs and key executives for their next roundtable. I mean, in short, he's setting the guidance and direction for the portfolio companies. And the third question was whether I was aware if Temasek is querying suspicious things. I think it really depends on what the scenario is. I do not have information on what Temasek's information on specific portfolio companies are. But I think I can say this much with confidence. As shareholders, when you have your shareholders' meetings, obviously the audited accounts are placed before the shareholders. I would certainly expect Temasek, as a shareholder, if it sees anything in the accounts that looks suspicious, to query it. Do I know of my own personal knowledge what their representatives do at shareholder meetings? I do not. But does the Ministry of Finance expect Temasek, when it sees something suspicious in audited accounts, to raise it at shareholders' meetings? The answer is yes.